Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. When things don't work out the way you imagine. Hi friends, it's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me, and today's episode is about what to do when things don't work out the way you think they're going to. In fact, I often say to people, it never looks like what you think, it's always something better. But sometimes it doesn't feel that way, right? So today we're going to talk about when things don't work out the way you imagine them or the way you want them to be. And what do we do about it as neurodivergent people, as intensely sensitive people? How do we handle those things? Now, some people who I call kind of the sleepwalking kind that aren't really paying attention to their own alignment will get all angry and flustered and things. And we all have our moments. I'm not saying anger is bad at all, but there's other ways to handle it. So I was talking to a client today, and we were talking about when things don't work out the way you imagine. Just how come? What do we do? And one of the things he said was he withdraws and gets really quiet and stops engaging with anybody. So his wife and his friends and other people know that he's upset that something's not working out, whether it's in his mind or work or family or whatever, because he just shuts down and gets quiet. Is that you? Are you the quiet one who withdraws? And then there's other neurodivergent people I work with. When things don't work out the way they imagine, they start asking really effective questions like, how can I use this in my favor? What am I learning from this? And staying open to something different. That's a cool thing to do too, right? But then there's some people who play the blame game because they've learned that we're responsible for what's happening in our lives, right? We co-create our world. And so then they blame themselves when something doesn't happen in the way they imagine. And that can be the most cruel form of betrayal, because blaming yourself for things not working out the way you imagine is not appropriate. We're taught that sometimes. Now, that's different. Blame is different than taking accountability or responsibility. So if something's not working out in the way you imagine because you didn't do your part, that's one conversation. The other conversation is things don't work out the way you imagine and you have been doing your part. Recently, I had an event where I did my part and then some. I even haven't had to cover things that other people did not complete, and I pulled it off. Now, the thing is, that event did not turn out anyway at all like I imagined. Some of the content I created was enhanced and nuanced to what I'd planned, came out great. Some of the people that were supposed to be there weren't able to get there for various reasons. And I was left wondering what was going to happen and how I was going to have things work smoothly for the attendees. But the right people showed up and it worked out just fine. Not at all like I imagined. But part of the process when things aren't working out the way we imagine is it's real easy to either blame ourselves or get upset or look outside of ourselves for why, and I remember what my grandfather used to always say. He still says it to me in my mind. He says, it's just life happening, Dianne. It's just life happening. And so as an intensely sensitive, neurodivergent woman who's very emotional and very dedicated to my work, when things start feeling all out of alignment, or I would say cattywampus, I have to remind myself it's just life happening. That allows my heart to stay open to what could come in as a result of the things that aren't working out. One of the big blessings in this recent event that I did was that I got to connect more deeply with my niece, who I love very much, and I don't see her a lot, but she came to the event and she brought her husband, and we had the best conversation and the best hugs, and it was a beautiful time. I didn't expect that. It didn't turn out the way I expected. Another person came to the event and brought their boyfriend, who happened to do a lot of videos and pictures, which I'm sure you'll be seeing. And That didn't turn out the way I expected. It was much better. In fact, a friend of mine said, well, videographers don't do like headshots and stills. And when I met this amazing person, he's like, well, I'd also do weddings. And so he did the portraits and he did the headshots and he did the video. So instead of having two different people there, I had one very skilled person. It didn't turn out at all the way I imagined. It's amazing, right? So when we stay open, things happen that are amazing. There was another person who attended the event who is neurodivergent and really amazing. And she has a great extroverted personality and is a great business person and understands human design and understands the way people like me are wired. And she looked at me at the end and she goes, I go to a lot of these kinds of events, and this is the first one I have not been bored. Not once. So that turned out really amazing. So there were times where things didn't turn out the way I imagined, and they were subpar. I was underwhelmed. Then there were things that turned out not in the way I imagined that exceeded even what I could have dreamt or hoped for. So I want to encourage you that when things aren't happening in your life the way you imagine them, and you feel that pull, that inner thing to push and pull and force and make things happen, that maybe the best thing to do is sit back and see. Maybe when we start feeling that urge to push, we remind ourselves to sit back for a moment, take a few breaths, and look at what's around us. Look at what's unfolding, because most likely it's more magical than you can see when you're all frustrated. And I want to caution you from blaming yourself. So many people blame themselves for things that happen. I even had somebody who I know ask me if I was mad at myself for things not working out the way I wanted them to. And I said, maybe 30 years ago I would have been, but I'm not today. I've run, 20, 30, 40 retreats, lots of them. And one of the things I know is that it never looks like I think it's going to. There were underwhelming moments where the event space people were condescending and rude, and I had to use my therapist skills in order to try to get some of my needs met, and even then it didn't happen. And in the middle of all of this very toxic, dismissive, womanizing behavior of this gentleman, there were people who came alongside me who I didn't really know very well, who saw what happened and stood up for me in a way that no one's ever done before, ever. And because I've always heard, you're smart, you can handle it. And I can handle it, but that's not the point. The point is what happened that was amazing in the face of something that was very painful and hard was somebody who said, I see you, Dianne, I get you, and I'm here for you. And it was meaningful. So in the midst of your hardship or in the midst of your upset, look around. There are people wanting to be there for you. There are people wanting to serve you and do something that will support you. Now, the key is you have to let them. It would have been real easy for me to say, oh, no, 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 oh, no, no, no. But I didn't. I've been practicing for decades and decades now to allow people to do their thing. And so when people offered to be supportive, I allowed that. Not only did that serve me, but it served them. Because if somebody's offering to serve you or help you or be there for you, it's a gift for them and you. And if you say no to that, and it's a healthy exchange, then you're stopping them and their blessing and you and your blessing. So I learned years ago to say yes. And what happens as time is unfolded is that things are smoothing out and new amazing things are emerging out of my work and out of my business and out of my personal life, because I was willing to kind of ride the rocky road, take that kayak down the rapids. I was willing to do that. And in that were beautiful gems that I had no idea were waiting for me. So had I not been willing to ride the rapids, the reward, the foray, the spoils of my work would have not happened. So I want to encourage you to allow yourselves to ride the waves of your life and ride the waves of your emotion, because life doesn't turn out the way we want it to. People don't act the way we want them to. We make mistakes and we don't act the way we want us to. Things happen, and it has nothing to do with your value. The truth is, you are 100% capable. You have everything within you needed to live your vocation, live your life in a successful, happy way. That I'm sure of. So any distance between that full satisfaction and happiness and joy and how you're feeling now when things aren't working out, any distance in there, it needs to be taken care of, right? Whether it's talking about it or finding a way to heal something that might be triggered or associating with different people. One of the hard lessons that I've learned recently, and same thing with this client of mine and his wife, is, and I think a lot of us have learned these lessons, is that there's some people in our world that don't necessarily belong in the tight inner circle that maybe we put them, that maybe they belong more in the friendship area, or not like getting rid of them out of your life, but maybe relooking at how that relationship is. And other people step in a different way. So we want to remember, life is fluid. Life is always moving. Life is this beautiful, elegant journey that we are all on. When you go outside at night and you look at the stars and the moon, there's elegant simplicity in what's happening. The planets, all of it. It's beautiful. And so our lives are a representation of that. Things come and go. People come and go. There's seasons. There's all kinds of ways for us to experience life. And most of the time, it's not doing what we want it to. So when we hold on to the judgment and we're rigid about what we think everything should look like, we create our own suffering. We create our own suffering by holding on very tightly to ideas and beliefs that are maybe not serving us or maybe even outdated. So it's the person who's open-minded and flexible and willing to learn and take in new information and integrate things that actually ends up happy and aware and being able to have really good things happen, even in the face of adversity. So I always remind myself that there is always something beautiful happening, even when it's painful, even when it hurts, even when I'm confused. I didn't like being dismissed and my name spelled wrong and this person treating me totally rudely and then being deceptive to that person's supervisor about what really happened. I didn't like that one bit. And it hurt a lot. And then they tried to say I wasn't a very good communicator. That didn't work, but it still hurt. When really the best way to handle it would have been to have a conversation without pointing fingers and without being dismissive and rude. And I have to remember that I'm only responsible for me. I'm not responsible for the way that person treats me. That person's way that he was treating me is a reflection on him. So I say this in my head all the time. What you're about to say is about you, whatever it is. So when this person was demeaning and rude and dismissive, then that person was speaking about their own sense and lack of value, inner value. And it gets covered up by a big ego. You know, there are other people who I know and I've seen and people that I've worked with who judge others because they believe that they're more spiritually aligned and more healed and more awakened than someone else. And they get into this judgment thing. And I've worked very hard in my life to release as much judgment as possible. And when I catch myself releasing it, because judging somebody means to assign a value to them. And no matter where someone is on their journey, no matter where you are on your life journey, being judged by another human being is not appropriate. It's just not appropriate. Because we all have our own path. We all have our own autobiography. We all have our own thing. And so when I see somebody who claims a lot of high spirituality judging another person, then I wonder about that. Where is the fragile piece of their own identity that requires that space of judgment, that push away that judgment does? Now, judgment is different than discernment. Discernment has a lot to do with saying, okay, this situation or this whatever's happening is for me or without me, for me or not for me, right? But what discernment is different than judgment is that judgment assigns value. Discernment does not. So if somebody is saying this person is not where I am and therefore they're not good enough or they're bad or they're whatever, that's judging. If they say this situation doesn't land on me very well and they stop there without then assigning a label or judgment, that's discernment. So there's a big difference in how we're holding our inner landscape. I have a high tolerance. I've been told for a long time that I have a high tolerance. A lot of people say, you must be a saint. Kenny Loggins calls me Yoda. And I think it's partly because I've lived a lot of really difficult times in my life. And there were times where I didn't want to live anymore. And there were times I didn't think I was going to make it through the pain, all at different moments. And now I can honestly say that even when something doesn't go my way, which has recently happened, and it's caused a lot of remembrance of upset and pain, one thing is for sure, I haven't lost my sovereignty and I haven't come out of alignment this time. So I've had lots of times where I messed it up when I was younger and as I was growing through things. And so if you're just starting on your journey or you're trying to sort out how to figure out what to do when things don't go your way, it's really important to have somebody safe to talk to. That's what I do all day with my mentoring clients. And you want to have people that aren't going to hold it against you later, right? That's what safety means, that you're psychologically safe, what's true for you, and it doesn't come back to bite you later, right? And typically that's not a relative. You want somebody outside of the family. That doesn't mean don't talk to the people you love. That just means you also want somebody else. And you want to journal and give yourself permission to write or draw or sketch, even if you throw it away, but let it come out in written form and then speaking form. Because when you write and you speak, you get much more resonant healing that way. And the most important thing to do, I think, is take care of yourself. Let yourself be connected to nature, meditate, do those things that allow you to go within and connect to the authentic you. Because the authentic you is fully equipped, is perfect exactly the way you are. Any perception of not being good enough or not measuring up is a lie we've learned somewhere along the way that we repeat to ourselves. When I was in third grade, I had a teacher tell me that I wasn't creative. Okay. I carried that message that I wasn't creative for many years. And I remember one time I was telling somebody actually who was my assistant in a treatment center I was working for, I said, I'm not very creative. I'm not creative like all you guys. And he laughed and laughed and he goes, oh yeah, you're not creative. Let me see. You write books, you do therapy, you teach people, you do this. And he listed 5 or 6 things. I erase boats and I do all these other creative things. And in that moment, that lights went off that, wow, I've been carrying this secret belief that I'm not creative. When in reality, there are all of these creative things, including the cooking I love to do, all of those things. I used to bake so much at Christmas. My father called me Ma Keebler. But I believed the lie for a long time, even in the face of information. So until I was ready to challenge the lie that was instilled in me by a teacher when I was in 3rd grade, until I was ready to look at that and see it for the lie that it is and the deception that it is, and then cease carrying it forward and replace that space with something more aligned, until I was willing to look at it really and discern what I wanted to do with it. It followed me like a shadow. And now I can talk about it and kind of laugh because I'm like, wow, I let that follow me that long. I didn't know any better. I have 2 clients that I just started working with not long ago, and both of them have said, if only I met you 20 years ago. People didn't teach me all of these things. I had a client that I worked with a few years back who went to some of the best schools and graduated from Princeton, a very good school. And he said, I've had the best education, but yet you're teaching me things I've never heard of before. Didn't have any idea about it. And I'm glad that I was offered to offer something to him that really served his life and helped change the course of his satisfaction in his relationships. So when things aren't going the way you want them, it could be a stroke of genius. It could be something great, but we have to be willing to ride the rocky road in order to appreciate and receive the good that's coming our way. We want to be careful not to blame or judge ourselves for whatever it is. That's different than taking accountability. We want to be responsible and accountable and do the right thing and do it first. So as somebody who is neurodivergent and very sensitive, I want to remind you that your neurodiversity, your giftedness, your different by designness is beautiful. This world would be so boring if we were all the same. So all the special, quirky, interesting things about you, I cherish them. When you're in my presence or I'm experiencing you in any way, it lands on me with goosebumps, and I cherish that. One of the best things about the retreat I just had was all the diversity and the beauty of the humans and all different spaces in their life coming together into a group with a common goal of emerging even more transformed. It was beautiful. So life doesn't always go the way we want. There were a lot of things in this recent event that didn't go the way I wanted, and a lot of things that didn't go the way I wanted, but they came out better. So be open-minded and remind yourself that if someone's going to get you, you have to be vulnerable a little bit. If you're going to let someone get you and be there for you, you have to be willing to receive it. So from here in the Someone Gets Me Casual studio, this is Dianne telling you to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you are a rock star after all. You are here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine. Feel free to make a call with me if you want to talk about this or anything else. Let me know what you think about everything. Give me some comments, and I will see you at the next episode of Someone Gets Me. Until the next episode, be well.
Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episodes, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.